Hello people! Recently, I've thought about trying out the Hiver Swarm faction mod for Starsector and been looking for more information on them, since I've heard rumors that they are quite strong. In my research I've stumbled across this thread, in which the Reddit user Pookie207 detailed their experiences with the Hiver faction. I recommend this video to anyone that is interested in the faction's strength on the campaign layer and inquire you to check out their original posts, if you want more detailed information. The links are in the description. This is Pookie207's post, but I changed some of the words to reduce possible spoilers and make it easier for the text-to-speech.
After recently starting a new campaign and seeing the core worlds in complete chaos only about one cycle in, with the Hiver Swarm having conquered the worlds of Syndria, Blackrock, Myasura, and numerous other major faction worlds, as well as having carried out several saturation bombardments generally curb-stomping the rest of the sector, a thought occurred to me. How would all of the factions fare against the Hivers if they were all united on the same side? With the exception of the Pirates and the Ludic Path. I decided I would find out. At the start of my next run, by using console commands, I changed the relationship values of the Pirates, the Ludic Path and Hiver Swarm, so they all had hostile relationships with each other and every other faction. In the meanwhile, all the other factions would be set to view the Pirates, Paythairs, and the Hiver Swarm as -100 vengeful. All the vanilla and modded factions would also perceive each other as having +100 cooperative relations. This included the Redacted faction. I tried to also include the Blade Breakers, but they somehow stayed hostile. Team Defense against the Hivers was composed of the Ashen Keepers, the Aurora Federation, Blackrock, Desalmacoyan, Diable Avionics, the Exalted, the Hegemony, the Interstellar Imperium, the Imperium of Man, the Iron Shell, the Ludic Church, the Orc Pirates, the Persean League, the Research Mandate, the Revolutionary Council, the Rimward Venture, the Shadow Yards, the Syndrian Diktat, Tritachyon, and the Independents. Altogether they were 20 factions. For this experiment to work correctly, the power of team defense needed to be measured by itself, without player intervention. So I promptly sodded off to a corner and hung out in orbit, over a couple of my own colonies, intervening against the Hiver menace only by blocking attacks, specifically the system my colony was in. I sat back and let the war play out for just over 10 cycles, and stopped to take score on June 18, cycle 216. Hiver losses. 2 of their core planets and 1 of their colonies had decivilized. The Hivers held 1 currently captured planet and 1 captured colony. Defense losses. 3 decivilized worlds and 1 decivilized colony. The defense team didn't capture any territory of the Hivers. Oddly, the score is a lot more balanced and stagnant than I anticipated it would be before the test. Either it was just a strangely stagnant war or I managed to achieve some form of reasonable balance. Keep in mind that at least 2 or 3 invasions have been pending at all times for the full 10 cycles with no intermission. An invasion was always being launched at something by someone, usually 4 to 5. Initially, due to the Hivers having less planets, this looked like an acceptable rate of attrition, but things gradually took a turn in the Hivers' favor over the course of the war. The 2 worlds the Hivers lost were decivilized rather than captured, both having relatively small impact on the Hiver war machine. It appeared as though the defense was winning for the first couple of cycles, with several successful captures of Hiver planets. Shoutouts to Blackrock, whom captured a planet first, and Shadow Yards for managing to capture the Hiver capital. Each incursion into Hiver territory was rebuffed in short order, however, and rapidly recaptured by the Hivers. Conversely, pushes the Hivers made into the core worlds, while also responded to rapidly by several other factions, also resulted in an intensive tug-of-war largely waged away from the Hivers' home turf, resulting in Myasura being destroyed as Marath was invaded over and over again until the world decivilized. At the end, It had been several cycles since any attempt into the Hiver home systems has successfully captured anything, even for a brief period. Meanwhile, the Hivers wage tug-of-wars over planets they've captured, gradually driving several to decivilization, and doing some saturation bombardments along the way. Special mention should be given to the Ashen Keepers, whom repelled 3 different invasions against their size, 3 colony, made a second colony, and started sending their own raids against the Hivers. Unfortunately, not all could follow the examples set by Blackrock and Shadow Yards as well as the Ashen Keepers did. War weariness has caused the factions to focus on fighting with each other over the existing territories, gradually contributing to the further falling apart of those worlds. While the defense team quickly formed into several large alliances at the beginning, and a mega-alliance formed of 14 factions, they were not immune to infighting. Gradually, as the average relation between factions fades away from 100 due to diplomatic incidents, wars between the defense team had already started happening and have been on the rise, with several wars in progress by the end scoring. Defense started out strong, but are all but certainly destined to lose the long war. It would take direct player intervention to save the sector from the Hivers, and that's with starting 20 factions at plus 100 cooperative with one another and a mega-alliance forming relatively quickly. At present, the mega-alliance is still 14 members strong, but the splintering of allies and the gradually lowering relations of the members are going to take their toll. While it's looking like the invasion to recapture the most recent Hiver-captured planet, Imperium of Mans Tertius, is going to be successful, the core worlds, aside from Ashen Keepers, haven't had much opportunity to expand. All currently existing colonies are still size 3, and before they can grow to be a substantial war asset, the alliance will likely have fallen apart. Even with all these boons, the Hivers hold massive dominance. It's still technically a close enough fight that it could turn in the alliance's favor, but that is unlikely at this point. Tug-of-wars fought over core world planets ripped said planets apart and already caused the loss of Mariath. Adding to that, several of the defenders are at war with one another, growing war weariness and further degrading relations between the remaining alliance members spell out the writing on the wall. The Hivers will win in the long run if not given outside intervention. Granted, it's quite a long run of still being close after 10 cycles, which is more than enough for a prospective player in this scenario to get colonies and fleets set up and take said intervention, but they'd win if left unperturbed. As opposed to the previous attempt, mentioned at the start, where they had several captured capital worlds within a cycle, but, still. Upgrades, people. Upgrades. The answer to, how strong are the Hivers? Enough to win a 1v20.
Yeah, so this post was quite useful. Going to think twice before installing the Hivers. I'd recommend you to check out Pookie207's other posts about their Hiver research. They did a deep dive on the exact numbers the Hivers have. Spoilers, the numbers are big.